Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex. As per usual, joining me are my two co-hosts, Noble
Howdy.
and Hugh.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the seasonal tournament. The open rounds just happened this past weekend. Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk about them before, but regardless, we're going to be talking about the seasonal, and then we're going to move into a little bit about the future. But I think we want to talk a little bit about the seasonal at first here. So I played in the seasonal this weekend. I posted a little thing in the Discord about what I was playing and why, but I think I'd like to spend a little bit of time to go into that a little bit more, like what my preparation was like, all those usual things.
Totally.
So for those of you who didn't see, I played Zoe Nami, Draven Scion, and Poppy Fizz. The last deck, Poppy Fizz, was kind of just like, I wanted to play a Poppy Soup deck because I thought they were like good in general, or like a Poppy Bandletree deck. I picked that one in particular because I really liked Ravenous Flock. That card has felt really good to me. I don't know if you guys have played any with or I don't know how much of the like various Bandle City pile decks you guys have played. Do you guys have favorite Bandle City decks? Because like
I've
every time I
managed
switch off that one, I
to
miss
play like
Flock so much.
4 or 5 games with each of them, and actually, playing a couple games in prep for this episode, I actually played a couple of games kind of by coincidence with that deck. That was the one that looked good to me, and then I realized that I was like, oh yeah, this is the deck Alex played.
Yeah.
And it just feels great. Like, Steve Rubin had one of his streams where he talks about, he like answers viewer question about Legends of Runeterra, and he kind of noted there that one of the strengths of one of the weaknesses of Vandal City is supposed to be dealing with larger creatures. So pairing that with like Scorched Earth and Ravenous Flock, allowing you to really shore up some weaknesses, as opposed to like Demacia, which doesn't do that for you. Even though you lose some explosion by not getting the rallies, is really, really powerful.
Yeah, I haven't played that version of the deck at all. I have played a couple Bandletree decks, and none of them have felt good to me. I think I'm just bad at playing the card Bandletree. I think I hold it too long. There's a bunch.
So good to just play, like if because it just draws you a card every turn. It's so good.
Yeah, I just always found myself in a position where like, can I really afford to not put a couple 2-drops in play? Because then I'll die. But then then if you really think about it, that situation's not going to change if I hold this off. So at least I should play it sooner. So I'm either dead sooner or have a chance of winning later. Is usually where it ends up.
It's one of those cards where I feel like it's really hard to play because it is like it almost feels like the thing you do when you're like falling off the cliff and you just like toss a rope up to like try and just barely hang on. You're like, I just need to hang on for 2 more turns and I win. And you just like play the Bandletree, 2 or 3 turns, I win. You play the Bandletree, you're already losing. You're like, whatever, it's fine. I'm losing the board. I'm losing in health. I'm going to lose in cards, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to cross the finish line with Bandletree right before I get there. And like, that's kind of how it feels to me a lot of the time. There's some games where you just roll your opponent and you just like have a million cards in hand and you play Bandletree and it was never close. But like most of the time, it feels like you kind of have to acknowledge that you're like basically throwing most of your turn away to play the Bandletree. So it's usually playing catch up from there. But like, yeah, because the Bandletree wins the game, it's okay to be playing catch up because you just win the game. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you think was the highest performer for you at the tournament? Which deck?
So I guess now I have to give the sad news of how the tournament actually went. So I got rocked. I hate to say. I just went Swift 0-2. I won my first game. I was feeling pretty good, and then I just lost 4 straight. And man, I've thought about those games quite a bit. I thought about the lineup I brought. So the deck that performed the best, I guess we'll say, it was the one deck I won a game with, which was Spacefish, Zoe Nami. That deck does some really dumb things sometimes. In case you guys didn't quite get the memo on that one, sometimes that deck is just completely unbeatable. So I won a game with that, and then I lost against Draven Scion once with Draven Scion, and then I lost another game with Draven Scion against Poppy Ziggs, which is the other like main Bandle City deck that I was considering playing. I ended up playing the Fizz Bandle Tree version instead of the like Poppy Ziggs Kill You version. Even though I think the Poppy Ziggs version is like a better ladder deck, I just had more reps with the Bandle Tree Fizz version, and I also really liked Bandle Tree in my lineup because like basically my other two decks were just trying to win by attacking with like various threats, and I really liked the idea of having 3 Bandle Trees as my win condition in my third deck because it made me slightly harder to interact with, even though I was bringing like all 3 of the best decks basically.
Yeah, okay.
The other. So I kind of got smashed in those 2 games. Oh man, the Draven Scion game was really close. So I played a game of Draven Scion so that matchup is like really about Lost Soul and Scion. And I did not see a Lost Soul at all the game, and my opponent had a Lost Soul since the second turn.
Yep.
And my opponent had an extra Scion than me, which is a big deal in that matchup, I think. And I still managed to like grind the game to a point where I had an onboard lethal attack when it was like going to my turn. And so I opened for lethal, but my opponent ripped the get excited to kill me when I was at 3, which I was pretty sad about because I felt like I played that game really well to get to the point where I was like, okay, just gotta fade one more draw, and then he spiked it and I lost. That was so sad.
Yeah, I mean, at least you played well. It sounds like. I mean, sometimes I don't know. Do you think it was a lineup issue? Because it sounds like you were overall reasonably happy with how you played the game.
Yeah, well, okay, so I basically just lost to the mirror twice.
Yeah.
So my lineup didn't feel bad. I kind of just, and which also sucks because I really do feel like I'm pretty good at those matchups because like I've been playing them
Totally.
all season, and like basically the sum of my article that I like posted in the Discord, but like the point of it was basically that like as a player, I feel like one of my strengths is playing matchups a lot and getting really good at the fine details of them and being like really good at knowing what my opponent has, what I have, how the cards interact, how these games play out. And so I felt pretty confident about this seasonal not, and I hadn't played the most for this season. But like the fact that the meta was really lined up well with
Especially because of
the fact that
worlds, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been playing these decks the whole time, right? So like, one of the things I mentioned in the article was that these 3 decks that I played were all the 3 decks that I just have played the most games with in this season by like a lot. And so like that alone almost felt like enough reason to play these decks, but like I also felt like they were just really good. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, just the right intersection of playtime and actual quality of the deck.
Totally, yeah. And
and Drysoth real quick, Drysoth had gotten second place in a tournament like the week before with basically this exact lineup as well. So like that just made me pretty confident my lineup was good.
Yeah, totally. And like, that happens. It sounds like you have an idea similar to a lot of people. And like, unless you're putting in weeks of constant work to try to find a counter lineup that like you really know and really know its matchups and what to ban against the non-standard stuff, like just playing the bread and butter good decks is always a solid strategy. And like, and the fact that you were on the same page as everyone else and, got outdrawn or maybe outplayed, like, you know what I mean? Like, didn't win mirrors is totally reasonable.
I basically showed up to this seasonal tournament and I was basically throwing the gauntlet. I was like, all right, I'm bringing the thing that I think everybody else is doing, and I'm just gonna be better than you at it. And I wasn't, I guess.
Yeah, or you got unlucky and that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, I feel like I ran pretty ice cold. I didn't draw Nami in my second round, and that was the end of that match.
Oh yeah, that'll get you.
Yeah, I just kind of got outdrawn really hard in the
That deck is so good when it has Nami
First
and
game.
like seems really unplayable when it doesn't.
That deck is it's just a pile. You can like you can scavenge a few games from the muck with Fleet Admiral Shelley.
Yeah.
But if you don't draw Nami, you're really in for it. And sometimes you play Nami and she just gets instantly mini morphed, and like those are really sad games too. So
Yeah. All right. Moving on to talking about the future of LOR and the podcast.
I think that sounds about right. That's pretty much a sum of my seasonal. I'm looking forward to seeing who wins it.
Yeah.
It's next weekend. So
Totally. Check out that kind of stuff. I'm certainly going to be, checking and tuning into coverage. Yeah. So as far as the future, this is episode 43.
I think it's 44.
44. Okay. Cool. Very cool. 44 of the podcast. And I think at this point, I don't know about y'all, but we're all in. Well, I do know about them. We talked about this beforehand, obviously, but we're all in very different places than when we started recording. Like that's almost a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And I was still,
Yeah.
kind of in college, and I think we are all moving on to other things. So we kind of hate to say it, and we've definitely done a lot of thinking about it. But I think this will be the second to last episode of the Champ Select podcast, which definitely a weird thing to say. It's been, obviously a large part of what we've been doing for the last almost a year, a lot of quarantine. And I think we're all just going to take a second to talk about it. And then, like I said, we'll tell you about our plans for the future and, what the podcast is going to look like. Because I don't think this is an end to me playing Legends of Runeterra or me interacting with the community. Or any of that, and I'm certain that it is certainly a possibility that we pick it back up again. But I don't know. For me, I kind of feel like I've said a lot of what I want to say about Legend of Runeterra. I'm really happy with what the content that we've made so far. There are a lot of episodes about specific metas and stuff, but I think that we had a lot of really good discussions about like mental and card games and that our kind of approach to playing games. And I personally have other things that I need to focus my energy on right now. I don't feel like I have the time or the drive to play even 10 hours a week of Legends of Runeterra, and I would likely be playing more than that if I'm trying to grind to top masters and compete at the seasonal or try to make worlds and stuff. Kind of coupled with the announcement from Riot that they're taking a long look at whether or not worlds is going to keep happening, and they didn't. I don't know if we've talked about this on air yet, but they did very clearly say seasonals are going on as scheduled, but there is no other plan for the future. Like, we are thinking about what we are going to do next, but they were not like there's going to be a Worlds next year. They were very specifically like they were thinking about whether or not there's going to be a Worlds next year.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
The rest I knew about.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, but anyway, I feel similarly to Noble. We've all talked about this at reasonable length, and I just we kind of just all felt that a lot of what we had to say that was unique or particularly insightful compared to other content creators has been said. At this point, we've all tapered off our playing to, I've played almost not at all in the last couple weeks. Just because we've all been doing different things. Like Alex is starting his PhD program and moved a 2-hour drive away. Like,
yeah,
Which is why that and many other things is why all three of us haven't been in a room for like 2 months now or something.
yeah. And then Noble was doing road trip traveling stuff, and he's looking for a job now. And I just actually quit mine, and I'm looking to figure out where I'm going to go from here. So we're all in a very transitional point,
Totally. Yeah.
and none of us really have the time to dedicate to Legends of Runeterra, and therefore don't really feel like we should continue.
Like getting up on a soapbox and telling you what we think about it, because
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not playing. am at this point, over the last couple weeks, not playing enough that I feel like an expert on the topic at all. So what I have to lend is my sparkling personality, but
Yeah, exactly.
which is great. And I think I can speak for all of us that like we're really proud of the things that we put out and a lot of the content we made
Absolutely.
here, and like it was really fun the whole time.
Oh, absolutely.
And, like I said, we still have the rest of this episode. We're gonna have one more episode after this that we've been doing a little bit of planning for. So make sure to tune in for that. But like for me personally, Hugh mentioned it a little bit. I just moved a 2-hour drive away. I'm starting a PhD program, and unsurprisingly, it's so much work.
Yeah.
And if it's tough to, especially because when my interaction with the game is always so focused on like, I guess I would say like optimal. Like I want everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
I want to grind it out really hard, and I feel like I hate delivering or hate having to like make educated guesses on that information. Basically, when I'm just not playing as much, and I think I can safely say that I've probably still played the most this season, but it hasn't been all that much, right?
Totally.
So like it's hard to get together in the same room. It's hard to try and be a competitive podcast when there just isn't as much time or as much drive as there once used to be, to be able to actually really play the games to make sure that we're giving like actual insightful advice.
Totally.
And like I said, I don't think any of us are really necessarily done playing. I still like the game a lot. I still play like 10 or 15 games a week since like classes started, which is not nearly as much as I was playing, but it's not none, right? So
and something that's actually pretty notable about Legends of Runeterra, at least in the way that I've been interacting with it, is primarily competitive, and like I queue up to play ranked. But unlike like there are a lot of games out there that I would play for fun, and Legend of Runeterra is fun, but when I played it, I was very focused on being competitive. So I'm definitely excited to like noodle around on labs more often, or try janky stuff, and kind of not have all of my interaction with the game need to be oriented towards being competitive, because even the whole time we've been doing this podcast, I still haven't had 20 hours a week to put into the game, so I would have to put 10 hours a week onto ranked ladder, and I couldn't really afford to play a bunch of labs because I needed to grind or whatever. And I think I definitely speak for all of us when we say we're absolutely blown away by the community that has kind of formed around this podcast, and we definitely don't want that to go anywhere. Like our Discord and the fact that we have over 100 people in it is honestly like, when that happened a month or two into it, I was absolutely blown away. And like that community is still active, and we love it. We're going to keep, administering it, keep playing, talking about decks in there and all that kind of stuff. This particular vehicle for me to talk about the game is not something that, I still feel equipped to do. And it kind of does a disservice to a listener if we're not giving it our all. Yeah.
And maybe we have always content's always pretty fun. I think it's very fun.
Totally.
But,
yeah, absolutely.
And that being said, I still think a lot of our older content, I'm pretty optimistic, is going to age pretty well. I think we said a lot of like, I don't know, Noble said it, but like we've said a lot of pieces on like our feelings about, especially like mental aspects of card games, like what it takes to really progress to the next level. And I think so many of the things we said have so many reaching applications over just more than just Legends of Runeterra that like I was really happy to even be able to get on and talk about those things and share those thoughts with other people. And it sounded like people really liked those a lot, and it helped a lot of people, and that alone makes the whole experience worth it for me. So like thank you everybody for listening that's been here the whole time. But I think moving a little bit more onto we still want to talk a little bit about Legends of Runeterra. So as we're going to be coming up to some of our final episodes, some of our final time here, I think we want to talk about like Legends of Runeterra, kind of in general. Talk about the state of the game, what we like about it, where we think it's going.
So I actually mentioned
sort of as a whole, like.
Well, so I just want to say real quick, like I kind of mentioned as we were talking about this, like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of content that we could make for spoiler season and talking about kind of when we wanted to conclude, because that's fun and I'm going to get excited about and that I'm going to want to make content about it. But I kind of realized we have absolutely no idea what the next spoiler season is going to look like, because it's the first time it hasn't been around a new region, right? Or is what's next Bandle City Part 2?
I think that we've seen that the next
2 will be Bandle City.
Well, I think we've just seen there's a big like meta shake-up balance patch coming, isn't there?
Yeah. That's the next thing, and then but after that, like new cards are coming out. Like new cards come out every season, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be more Bandle City and some of the other regions, I'm sure, but I'm not sure that all of that has been confirmed yet.
Yeah, totally. And that's how they've been doing releases. But after the next 2 releases, there are 3 champions each. If the past is the model they're still going by, like. Who knows?
What next?
Yeah, who knows what will happen next? Sorry, Alex, you said just kind of reflect on.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to sort of like reflect about the game. Where do you think it's going in the future? I think that'll be a fun topic to talk about as well. Any particular thoughts you want to mention?
Yeah. I'll give a quick my thoughts on Legends of Runeterra. Maybe we can kind of take turns. I obviously love Legends of Runeterra. We wouldn't have made this podcast if we didn't. But I've been thinking a lot about about games in general recently, as I always do. But I'm a game designer. We've mentioned that before. But I recently went to Gen Con to demo a game that we actually all worked on a couple of years ago, and this is the newer set. And I'm also currently working on a different game called Singularity, which I'm sure if you stick around our in our circles, I'm sure we'll mention the Champs Like Discord and on Twitter and all that, and talk more about it, which is another game that we are currently in the process of developing. So I've been thinking a lot, and both of those are card games, about the qualities of a game, the kind of things that make up a game, and what makes the gameplay fun and interesting and unique. And so I've really been thinking about Legends of Runeterra. And Legends of Runeterra is really interesting in a way that I actually think none of... Magic certainly isn't, and a lot of other games aren't, where how linear the progression of the game is. Like, both players have access to the same amount of total resources in a game, right? If the game goes to turn 8, you will have had access to 31 mana worth of unit mana, right? 10 in the first 4 turns, and then 6, 7, 8. So yeah, my math was right. 31, yep. Something like that. And that is that's not true in Magic. That's not true in a game like Pokemon. So it is bounded in that way. And Legend of Runeterra is a game with a lot of restrictions on it, right? There are only 6 unit slots. There's a maximum hand limit of 10. And then, like you said, there's the maximum mana you can ever spend in a turn, outside of some expensive like Veiled Temple, that are always powerful. Is that you can only ever spend 13 mana in a turn, and those constraints are very interesting. And I really like Legend of Runeterra because of how fluid the games feel. The passing back and forth system is still one of my favorite things, and actually something that we use in that game that I'm developing right now. Because I think that give and take and the strategy of like when to open attack, when to develop, and then the way you play cards like the Runation or Avalanche or like slow spells and stuff like that is really, really fascinating. And I think that's incredible. I also really love their obviously free-to-play model. We've been talking about it the whole time, but I love that I haven't had to spend a single dollar on a card in this game, which is just really great. Riot obviously made a great game. Competitively, I think that their formats have been better on average than Magic formats of the last few years, as the most prominent example. But there is definitely a tendency with the 3-deck lineup for there to be some consolidation. Like you said, Alec, you basically played 2 mirrors, so that means 3 people. The 3 people involved in your 2 matches all brought very similar decks. And that was true for me in several seasonals, like the seasonal where I played Thresh Nasus, Azir Irelia, and they all blend together. But like I remember playing just Oh yeah, it was TLC, Thresh, Nasus, and Lee Zoe.
Oh, yeah,
and I
that was a
remember
classic.
like everyone having Thresh, Nasus, TLC in their lineup, and like that generating a lot of mirror matches because of kind of way that format is. So I mean, and that's the thing Riot is looking at, and I'm very excited to see what they want to do in the future. That is kind of my semi-coherent 2 cents. I think in the future, Ruben actually said that instead of reworking champions, I don't know if y'all are with the concept in League of reworking a champion, taking an existing champion and changing fundamentally some way that its abilities work, usually giving it a new character and all that. He said that they are unlikely to do that and would instead just print a new champion card, like a Katarina that is 2 mana and does things, or 4 mana or whatever.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and so that is kind of one of their when they run out of champions in a region plans, which is kind of cool and neat to think about, and something that I kind of expected. They probably want to interact with Draven the character again, but they really but the Draven card they've designed is excellent, and they probably don't want to erase it from the game.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
I hope they don't touch him.
Yes,
best.
Me too. I would not be surprised if they came out with formats of some kind at a point where cards from Foundations were no longer legal, for example. But then again, Foundations in particular has a lot of foundational cards of the 6 main regions. Well, the 6 base beginning regions. You know what I mean? That would be it would be very weird if this game existed in Mystic Shot. Mystic Shot didn't, because it's been such a defining card for so long.
I would need my Mystic Shots,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for me, for LOR, I've just always loved the So for starters, the visual and the appeal of it is it really just drags you in. It's great. It still has my favorite limited. I love Expedition. So
interesting.
That was my original love of the game, and I've still got it. I love Expedition. And for me, I just love how consistent its competitive experience is. And I know I just said that I got kind of RNG'd and screwed out of that last tournament, but really, that doesn't happen very much, I swear.
Totally.
Most of the games are really competitive. It feels like the better player wins a lot of the time. And, granted, I lost those games, so maybe I got better player than them, whatever. But, as a competitor, as somebody who really likes to, look towards the upper echelon of play and really, I try to strive to be as close as I can be to that level. I just love the way that this game operated that. My biggest gripe was the ladder system. I wish there were more tournaments that were supported, and there was a little bit more of a tournament circuit scene type thing. And you could find them, and you can find them, and I suspect that in the future, this is one of the things that I think, looking towards the future, is probably going to be true, where there's just going to be more tournaments. Maybe you'll be able to access them in client. That would be wonderful. MTGA has kind of done something similar to that with their online Grand Prix-esque things. I would love to see a little bit more like that in Legends of Runeterra. And I think there's going to be more tournaments. I really like the tournament format. The ladder format is kind of exhausting, and ladder always is exhausting, especially with these type of games. And I understand why it exists, and I think it should exist. It's just really a grind. It's really, really, really hard to have the time and the motivation, because the motivation is a real part for a lot of people.
Totally.
Me included, obviously.
Yeah, I know that the only time that I got serious about Magic, it had nothing to do with ladder and everything to do with driving to 1 or 2 tournaments a week for months. And so the tournament circuit is definitely a more appealing competitive format for me than ladder, because while seasonals are kind of a tournament circuit, you need ladder to get there every season, and they don't chain into each other at all. Getting first in a seasonal doesn't auto qualify you for the next seasonal. So yeah,
and all that kind of adds up to make it a big grinding, a bit of a grind, and that does wear on you over time. And me and Hugh talked about burnout a little bit, and burnout's real. We've all experienced it. So it kind of feels while I really love all of the aspects of the competitive side of Legends of Runeterra, the one thing is that it's kind of a grind. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just need a reset. I personally could really use a small break from the grind. kind of clear my head, come back at it with a different angle. But oh man, in the meantime, I still absolutely edition, dude. It's so sick.
Well, I'm glad you have something you'll always come back to and something to do more of now that you're not going to focus on the competitive side as much. But I don't know how much there is left to say that these two haven't already said about just the burnout aspect. I mean, it's pretty much the same for me. Like, Alex and I are very similar people in that when we do a thing, we sit down and we ask.
Yeah, we go hard.
Yeah, we sit down with someone else who has played or done whatever we happen to be doing at the moment, and we look at them and say, "What's the best thing?" We just say, "What is the best thing to do?" And they give us like one or two decks, and they show us the ropes, and then we're just like, "All right, we're gonna figure it out from here," and then we like dive in deep, and we go
3
nuts.
hours, and we'll be on level 15 already.
Yeah. So, like, for me, I just want to say I've been teaching a lot of people to play games recently because I've been teaching people Singularity, and then Evian is the other game that I worked on and demoed at Gen Con, so I was showing people to play games there. And these two might be some of the only people that I've ever met that were I teaching them a new game, I would just hand them 2 tier 1 decks. Like, for everyone else, you want like an intro deck, simple cards. Like, no. I would just hand these people like the 2 best decks that I thought were like close to pretty simple, and just like because that is it. That's what you want.
The most busted thing I could do is,
yeah,
and that's where I want to be. I want to be doing the most busted thing at all times.
Yep, because at the end of the day, Alex and I are so spiky that as long as we're winning games, we're probably having fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even
I cut myself earlier this morning when I was shaving. I cut the razor
because you're spiky. Is that where this is going?
Yep. It's because I'm spiked.
You're spiked. My God. All right. Well, I guess it's a good thing that we're quitting the podcast.
I was going to say, it wouldn't be an episode without a really bad joke. So, thank you, Alex, for contributing.
Edgewise,
Yeah. Oh, good.
Jesus. But yeah, now that we won't be interacting with the competitive side of the game as much anymore, it's going to be just nice to play the game for fun, and I will definitely be doing it a lot less than I normally do, because I don't really know how to interact with a card game in a non-competitive way. I've never done it. Even no matter what card game I play, even if there isn't a competitive scene for it, I still treat it like I treated Magic, like I treated the Legends of Runeterra, like I've treated Hearthstone. Like I approach it the same way and behave the same way, and I just want to like do the best thing all the time. And that's not even limited to card games. I ask, like, whatever game I play, I'm like, oh, what are the most like powerful guns or weapons or
classes,
equipment
like,
or
what's
classes?
The combo I should build.
Yeah, exactly. What's the best build? Like I want to do the best thing, because being strong is fun. And I don't know.
The first time I ever played D&D seriously was with these two, and I just like kind of like built a character and like did things, and the amount of min-maxing that was going on.
It was disgusting.
Good times.
I don't know if you guys remember, but I showed up to that session, the first session, and I was like, I'd never played Pathfinder before, and I showed up with a mythic, like a level 1 mythic spell that like completely broke the game, and Jake was like, no, those are bad. I was like, damn it. I spent 10 and a half hours like scrolling through pages and pages of options to find this one caveat busted spell and like make it mythic. And then Jake was like, no, that's absolutely banned.
And your character still lived the whole campaign and was dope, so well done. That's a win.
It was a fun game. That was a good game. But regardless, like, as far as the like mechanics of Legends of Runeterra, like I still love the mechanics of this game. Like you mentioned the pass system earlier. Pass system is so good. I love passing. Passing is like one of my favorite things in all of card gaming. When you're sitting there, you have all the answers, and you just click pass, and your opponent just like hits the Ezreal sweating emote. That's sublime.
I Alex's catchphrase is like, we could just pass here. Like, we'll be playing a game together, and the amount of times Alex says, like, we could just pass here, it's like, insane. Yeah.
And probably too many, but...
I passed probably too much, but I love passing.
Oh, I agree. Passing is, like, probably one of the best things to do in this game, because, like, it's just such a power move. And when you're doing it right, when you're passing properly at the right times across an entire game, you just feel like you can't lose. You just feel completely in control.
I miss that. Maybe that's why I haven't been liking Legends of Runeterra. I want to cast more Withering Whales. The good old days.
I'm telling you, you need some more Mystic Shot in your life. Everybody does.
That's fair.
Everybody's all on this Scion thing. Like, no. Be on the Minimorph side of the Scion. It's fun.
Yeah.
I will say that I think part of the reason my play has tapered off a bit is because the meta has definitely progressively sped up to a point where, because as you all know, my general favorite type of deck is slow.
Yeah.
I like slow things, other than pirates for some reason. I don't know why. Like, that's the exception.
That one tickles you fancy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that has always, like.
Pirates are cool, man. I get it.
There's not even that many actual pirates in the deck. Anyway. Yeah, no, I like slower decks like Spooky Karma, Anivia Control. Those are a couple of my favorite decks ever, and Karma is still my favorite champion and so unplayable.
She even got unnerved.
I know.
She's all right.
She's aggressively mediocre, but
there was a week like 2 weeks ago where she was seeing some play.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. But anyway, the game has sped up to a point where, like, I can't really sit there and click pass for 7 turns and then just cast a Ruination and be fine.
Yeah, I never thought I'd see a meta where Shadow Isles was bad.
Same.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. The Shadow Isles is, like, actually just, like, kind of bad.
Yeah. So another thing that Ruben said in their little stream, I read a little summary of it, was that the average their goal average length for a game is 8.59 turns, and currently it's at 8, so it's definitely fast. And in Azarelia, it was 7.5, and that was like a big warning sign of the play patterns being bad because the games were ending very quickly.
Yeah, okay, I didn't actually. That's an interesting statistic. 8.59.
8.549, yeah. And that seemed so high to me, and then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, because it feels like if the average game of Magic formats that are good are not over on turn 8 or 9. They're like 5 or 6, depending on the format. And like, yeah.
I guess the briefly before 10 makes a lot of sense because you want the decks that want to get to 10
to be able to
get to 10 and win when they get to where they want to go and reward them for getting that far. And you also want the faster decks to be able to kill them before they get there. And
that's another thing I love about this game. I love that the control decks just win the damn game. Like, I love that the big decks just turn the corner definitively enough that you can be like, okay, as an aggro deck, it is past turn 8 and they have a Nifia in play, I can go ahead and scoop it up or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like in Magic where, like, I have to stare at, like, a single 2/2 for, like, 10 turns and it will literally kill me if I don't, like, use a kill spell on it because my deck is so slow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a thing that happens in Magic. And
yeah, that's in case anybody had any type of idea as to what decks you likes to play.
That turns out
that's a general concern for you.
A like vanilla 2/2.
Yeah, Goblin Guide is the bane of your existence.
No, just
well, that one draws cards.
I think the most demoralizing game I ever played was when I played I played Legacy Miracles and someone just sat down with, like, mono black with the card Nightmare in it.
Wait, the 6 mana.
Yeah.
Like horse. The card is like
That was it,
the
right?
epitome of like draft chaff.
I'm playing against Shivan Dragon. Like,
They're like Dark Ritual 2/2. I'm sorry, I'm wheezing at this.
No, they just straight up took 6 turns to do nothing, and because I was Miracles, I also did nothing.
Yeah, you're like, I have this counterbalance stop thing. Boy, does it not counter 6 drops.
yeah, let me see if I can find a Terminus to put on top. Okay. But anyway, like, I think that probably brings us to a close on our general thoughts. Obviously, we're going to be talking about LOR as a whole and our relationship with it more next week. But I think, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to add...
Well, we should fill them in real quick on what that next episode is going to look like. Let's not leave them in too much
certainly.
suspense. So Dr. Blues, I believe in our Discord, had an excellent idea for an interview episode and came up with a list of questions. We've all found a time as our crowning episode to all be here in this room in person. And hopefully we will probably recruit another one of our friends to interview us to kind of add to the atmosphere and so that we're not asking each other questions. We have a very nice long list of questions about ourselves, the games, the things we do outside the game, our favorite parts about it, and all that just felt like the perfect conclusion to the podcast. So thank you to Dr. Blues for that. And
It's a
we're
pretty
very excited to do
comprehensive
it.
list.
It was excellently put
It
together.
put a lot of work into
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he reached out to me like a couple weeks ago on Discord and just hit me up. He was like, I have this idea.
Yeah.
After he listened to the episode that Q and I put out, which was awesome, and it's an excellent idea, so thank you to Dr. Blues.
And another great example about how
any other questions you'd like to ask us.
Banging community is the best part about this game. Like, I love all you guys. Your Discord is just so awesome. And you know,
Community is
it will endure. Don't you worry about that. So all right, are we going to get on to questions of the week?
Yeah, let's get into it. So speaking of Dr. Blues, he has our question of the week for this week. He asks, what do you feel is the general health of the game regarding discoverability, popularity, and player retention? Hugh, let's start with Hugh on this one.
Yeah, okay. So just one at a time, I think discoverability is extremely high because you've got League of Legends, the like second most popular game in the world behind like Fortnite or something.
It's the League of Legends card game. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So you've got tens of millions of players opening this League client, and just in giant letters you see "Go play Legends of Runeterra," and you're like, "What's that?" And you click on, "Oh, they made a card game," and that alone is just a massive funnel to get players to play this game. And then they just also have great marketing. Like there's a bunch of ways to find the game, and yeah, the game is very discoverable. I do think that it seems like popularity has been waning a bit, but I don't know. I feel like that's normal. We just hit post Worlds, like we just finished Worlds, and it doesn't really matter what game you're looking at. As if the World Championships for a game happens and finishes, the next like 2 or 3 weeks generally has like a noticeable drop in viewership. And I think that's just normal.
Yeah, everybody caring about it and then less people caring about it.
Yeah,
It's
because
totally reasonable.
all of a sudden, you know, people who normally care all the time tell their friends, they're like, "Hey, come watch this with me," and they're like, "Oh, okay, it's the World Championship, why not?"
Yeah.
And then those people, you know, leave.
Yeah.
And oh god, what was the third thing you said in the question?
player retention.
Player retention. This is the most interesting one. I have no numbers on this at all.
I don't know that anyone does.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Hopefully Riot does, but other than that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like what should be happening is that player retention should be either very good or pretty poor, and like not much in between, because it matters. Their free to play system is very generous. So on the one hand, a lot of people are going to see that and be like, aha, if I just play a little bit every week consistently, I'll have a good collection very quickly. And I think that's the much more common sentiment. I know that on the more competitive side, like people like me and Alex and Nico, Closing Time, all kind of, we felt that we wanted it to be faster. When we all started, we were like, all right, how do I buy all the cards right now? And you can't. You just can't. They limit you to 3 Champ Wild cards a week in the store. And you just,
Which is a fascinating model, by
it's
the
a
way.
very interesting thing to do. We were baffled when we saw that you couldn't, that they put a cap on the amount of money we could give them for cards. Like, that was crazy to us.
They wanted everybody to be in the struggle for a little bit.
Yeah, and so, like, I think for aggressively competitive people like us, it was a bit of a turnoff. But I think the vast majority of people should want to come back to the game constantly, because most people don't have that sense of urgency. They just see, oh, I can build a full collection for free. Great. I just have to play for a couple months and not that much. And that's fine. So I feel like player retention should be good. But again, I have no data to support that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as people who are no longer going to prioritize Legends of Runeterra in their lives, like, the player retention comes at a funny time. I definitely chuckled when I read it, because it was kind of like, yeah,
We picked this one on purpose.
yeah, definitely. And like, yeah, the games are interesting, and you know, I see sweet decks very often that I want to try, and they're very novel. One of the things I definitely didn't like about this expansion was that it felt like so many of the matchups were just playing infinite 2-1s or 2-2s that drew cards and then just jamming them into each other. Not a lot of my Bandle City mirrors were particularly interesting, though I'm sure that I could have played them better. I'm not saying anything like that. But I do ultimately think that the gameplay is very fun, and they do a really good job of making almost every card that exists playable in some deck, and not all of those decks are playable, but you can really do what you want, which is a very, very unique and very awesome, and not something that other formats could boast. And it's fine that those games don't shoot for that. But I definitely really like that. I don't know. I think it's going great. It's Worlds was at least kind of well watched, and that, and the kind of like the organized play announcement being kind of lackluster, and there being a really long time from balance changes, I do kind of get the vibe that the hype is kind of like trickling downwards, and I'm interested to see if a new card release and a balance patch kind of rejuvenates a little bit. And not every game is going to last forever. That's just a fact. I do think Legends of Runeterra is very good. It's obviously made by Riot, a company that has a lot of resources at its disposal and with a very popular IP. So it is definitely one of the games that I believe will persist into the future and be relevant for quite a while. And it does some really, really interesting things that I think, in a lot of ways, like revolutionized parts of the genre. Like, I think like parts of the deck building and the passing system and the mana system are very, very interesting, and they feel like other games refined, not necessarily like this totally wacky new thing. Like, at the end of the day, you're still putting units on a board and attacking each other with it. It's semi-similar to what's going on in Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Magic or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a very clean implementation of the card game, and it stands as one of the best examples out there. So I think it'll persist, and I think a lot of this is just kind of like a natural ups and down swings with like release cycles, balance cycles, worlds, and stuff. So I'm kind of excited to see what the future holds there for sure.
Yeah, so as far as like discoverability, I think you nailed it there. Like, real quick, discoverability, like, this is the League of Legends card game. As long as it is the League of Legends card game, it's going to have insanely discoverability, because there's so many people who play League of Legends that, like, people are just going to see it. As far as popularity, like, and player retention, like, I feel like both have been dwindling a little bit. So player retention dropping off makes a lot of sense to me in my head, just because, like, obviously the longer a game has been out, the more likely it is that people are going to stop playing it. Like, does that make sense? Right? Like, until you reach a certain age of like the like oldest games that have been played by people for like many years, and like that's part of the draw. I'm thinking, games like StarCraft or like chess even is like a way more extreme example. But like, the retention is just going to go down over time, like because people have been playing it for longer, so they're less likely to keep playing it. Like that just feels natural to me. So I think that that's going down a little bit, and we're kind of just hitting it a little bit for the first time as a community. I really feel like. So like, there's a few of our favorite professionals are like retiring. Some of the content is stopping just because people have been doing it for a while, and it's time to move on for a lot of people. So I think that that's totally normal and fine. I don't think it's alarming. I don't think the game is dying or anything even close to that. I just think that there's a little bit of a wave with some old faces leaving, and there will be some new faces coming in to replace those, and that's perfectly normal. That's supposed to happen. So as far as game health goes, I actually think it's really good, and not just like in that community way. I think the actual core gameplay of the game right now, really good. Like one of the best metas we've seen for Legends of Runeterra, honestly, which is kind of disappointing that it's like going hand in hand with people kind of playing a little less. And honestly, I have some theories that like that also might have a lot to do with sort of, especially, or at least in the United States around where we are, like quarantine kind of lifting up a little bit and people like going out and doing their other hobbies that they haven't been able to do for like a year and a half has almost certainly like eaten Legends of Runeterra time from a lot of people.
And like,
well.
especially like just coming out of summer, like it makes sense that things have dipped generally because, people are outside. As the cold months approach, I definitely expect to see more people,
Yeah, I agree. So moving on, our next question comes from Mr. Purple, aka Ben. In a similar vein, they ask, what are your guys' thoughts on the declining viewership on Twitch? So I guess I'll go ahead and start with this one. Basically, I think that I'm not too worried about it, for similar reasons. I basically... Why I think we have declining viewership is basically just the natural player attention thing with other people are, schools starting back up. Like that's a very real thing for Twitch streamers. I've heard some people talk about that. It's that like a lot of their audience can't watch Twitch streams in the middle of the day when school's starting. So like that's a big part of that audience that goes away. The game's been out for a long time, so there's a little bit less player attention. The world's kind of opening back up, so people are doing other things. So a little bit of declining Twitch viewership is not all that shocking, and I think that that's generally true across the entire platform around this time of year, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, everyone going back to school right now, both viewers, either in high school, college area, or creators. So, in fact, I know a couple big, both Magic and Legend of Runeterra pros I've seen announcing that they're going to go back to college or whatever, and so I remember reading at least one announcement about someone who was stopping streaming because of that. So
yeah, I mean, just look at Alex.
Yep, exactly. Yep,
that's exactly what's happening.
Already washed, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have much to add to any of that. I think.
To add to that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we kind of covered it with the other question too.
Yeah,
Excellent.
exactly.
All right. Our next question comes from Dragon. They ask, patch 2.17 did not bring any new balance changes, but patch 2.18 is shaping up, to be another big shake-up patch. What is one buff nerf you expect to see, and what is one buff nerf you'd want to see? So, what do you guys want to see change? No, you got any ideas off the top?
So in that, I'm going to keep referencing this run piece of Legend of Runeterra content. I was really fascinated by, because like I said, I'm a game developer, so I always love hearing from them. But Ruben definitely kind of tactfully admitted that Bandle City was maybe a little too good at doing the thing of putting a bunch of units on board. So I think I would definitely expect a nerf to. I don't probably Bandle City Mare. Is that what he's called?
Yes,
Bandle City Mare. I kept wanting to say Bandle Tree in my head, just kept playing the word tree there. Or the Commando, just because they're so well flood the board. Even just making Mare like a 2/1 would make him way easier to clean up with random dinky effects that are already good against the deck. And take him from sometimes can attack to basically never can attack, which would definitely help. I don't think Poppy needs it. I've played a lot of games where Poppy has been immediately get excited or Tristana's champ spelled the bundle shot.
Buster shot.
Yeah, Buster shot. Yeah, or aftershocks kind of things. Grasp of the Undying level of removal.
It dies on sight a lot.
Yeah, thermo beam, that kind of thing. So I don't expect too many adjustments to champions. I wouldn't be surprised to see Nami change just a little. Either maybe giving like only +1/+1 on the flip side, or just being a little harder to level.
What do you think, Hugh?
So, y'all already know.
Sorry, and I want to see Wiggly Burblefish nerf revert.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
That would be nice.
Love that. Love
Go
to
back.
see.
I don't
Power
know if
level
I
up.
can get behind that.
Right, hear me? Up.
Bring back TF Fizz.
Yeah.
And kill the mayor. End that card. just get rid of it.
Duke it for
I
Morbid.
hate. Y'all know how I feel about Bandle City Mayor. I absolutely detest playing against that card.
Might I suggest playing with that card? It's a good time.
Yeah, I have played with it a little bit. And I'm not, and let's be clear, I am not the kind of person who on principle, like, doesn't play the broken
Totally,
deck because it's too broken. Like, no. Give me the broken deck. Like, if it has an 80% win rate, I will play nothing but that deck. Let's be clear. But I just don't enjoy the Bandle City decks for the most part. For some reason, I don't know what it is.
It's so... I get it. It's like the antithesis of what you normally like doing in a card game. Like, you normally like sitting back and playing like the occasional very large impactful spell, and Bandle City is like every time it's your action, you play some dumb dinky thing that draws another card.
Yeah, but I also
Keep
love drawing
playing
cards.
dinky
I don't
things.
know.
Yeah, but they don't all. I don't know. Like, I get the drawing cards, but it's not as good as draw a card because it's like, oh, another dinky 1-mana thing.
Yeah,
You know?
that's fair.
It's like, oh, I'm discovering an Otterpuss. You know?
Yeah, that's true. And I think that well, actually, we'll save Minimorph for later because I think someone has a question about it. But
Yeah,
that's a
card is-
card we'll probably end up talking about in a second here. I know that people are like really up in arms about Nami. I don't. Once again, a thing that buffs the health of units proves to be a little bit too powerful. Much like Veiled Temple, it could be that they just like take away the health and make it +2/+0. But that's such a massive nerf. Like it might make her just completely unplayable, and which they did with Veiled Temple. Like,
Let me tell you what. I would not want to be the person in charge of the Nami fix because I've thought about it, and I do not know what the hell you would change about that card.
Yeah.
Other than maybe make her harder to flip. That feels like the only thing that, like, you know, maybe you need to require like
9
mana or 8 or 9 or something.
Even 8, so bank, attune doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that would go a long way.
it would just 1 extra. And when you're not constantly trying to flip her, she's actually like weirdly difficult to flip because all of a sudden you realize that you need to
just
play
have to keep
units.
playing only spells.
Yeah, and then you can't get rid of your spell mana. Like it gets very weird very quickly. But I do think that
It gets
there is a
tough sometimes.
bit of a problem with champs like her and Poppy, where yes, they get removed on sight if you have the removal spell, but I feel like you shouldn't instantly lose the game if you don't have a removal spell immediately, because that's kind of what happens.
It really is. And so, like, for me, when I think about, like, the buff nerf, like, I don't know, we just talked about it, but the number one card I expect to see hit is Nami. I think something's going to have to change. That champion just leads to some absolute nonsense games. Like,
yeah.
so, it just has like the most laughably one-sided games I've played in a long time. In this,
Yeah.
OG Azir Irelia, before people really caught on, kind of felt like that too. But where sometimes you would just be laughing all the way to the bank as your opponent just got completely annihilated. OG Lee Zoe felt a little bit like that too. But this deck has that feeling, but the reason it's not broken is because you only draw Nami so often.
Yeah.
And that's just like not a crazy fun play pattern, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, and the deck has
like that deck.
The deck often, if it wants to be doing the broken thing, can't do anything until turn 3, which is definitely rough. But like,
yeah, and so it really feels like this like kind of feast or famine thing with that deck, where like you're either playing against the most ridiculous shit you've ever seen in the game, and you wonder how it's reasonable and how it's fair, or the deck just does like nothing and like maybe tries to like you just barely get across the finish line with a Fleet Admiral Shelley on like turn 7, and it's not all that impressive.
Yeah.
So I don't love that dichotomy about that deck, at least from the playing against it side. I think it's kind of interesting pieced all together when you're playing the deck, but I would expect a Nami nerf of some sort. I want... what changes do I want? The change that I think I most want is, ironically, like a buff to some of the Bandle City things, but not in the way you think. So like I want them to take some power away from the like ridiculous cards like Bandle City Mayor, maybe Loping Telescope, basically the little dorky cards that make more cards. That entire play pattern is not my favorite. Basically, the games feel not that basic. It just feels too hard to deal with, and the games get a little bit too crazy. And so I would like a little bit more power placed into the like oh man, I can't remember. It's spacing my name. The 4-mana 3/2 with impact that makes a 2/3 with impact, like Terror Tremor.
Well, that card's just already insane.
Yeah, that card's already insane, but I wish that more of Bandle City's power felt like that. Is basically what I'm getting at here.
Okay.
Like I want more rewards for going wide, other than my rewards for going wide to just be a bunch of cheap little dorky things that draw me another prank.
You have not been playing enough of, oh gosh, I'm really bad at remembering card names. The thing that gives your whole board +4/+4?
Yordles and Arms. No,
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the Bandle City archetype.
Okay. Interesting.
Like Yordles and Arms, half of it. Because like despite, what I said earlier where I played the Fizz like Bandle Tree version in the seasonal, and I did that largely because I thought that Bandle Tree is a particularly good tournament card as opposed to a ladder card. But as far as like ladder goes, like I love the fact that the like Yordles and Arms thing is like one of the best things you can be doing, and I actually really like that aspect of Bandle City because I think that's really interesting, and we like basically the only swarm-ish, like we've had some swarm-ish decks in the past, and they've kind of all been an entire like staple of the meta.
Totally.
And I've always thought they were interesting because they end up like, making Avalanche good, and I really like those decks. And then when Avalanche is good, usually like Lee Sin is good. Basically, I really like those metas. So
you want the
wish
cards
that
to
the
replace
Bandle City
themselves
cards
less, but kind of
functioned in such a way that Avalanche was good against them. But swarm a little harder.
Yeah.
Basically.
That makes sense.
Go a little bit less long and go maybe hit the face a little harder. Maybe lean a little more into the impact.
Yeah, I mean, the epitome of the craziness for me today was like after mini morphing a flipped Vi, like I had 0 cards, my opponent had 0 cards, I had a pair of a 2/2 or something, and I just like ripped Mare into Telescope into Tenor of Terror, and just like we both had no cards, and then I had a full board, and it was just like, my god. Like, these cards go so hard. Like,
it just got so hard.
yeah. But
All
right, next question.
Yeah, our next question comes from Juxta. They ask, which Battle Academia skin is your favorite? I bought them all 2 minutes into the patch because I'm a whale. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't even looked at the skins. I don't even know which champions have the skins. I've never looked at the skins. I'm not the skins guy. I'm sorry. You guys know you guys have any idea which champs are the Battle Academia?
All I know is that Lux has one because someone posted on the subreddit that her Final Spark art is different for the Battle Academia skin,
Oh, that's kind of cool.
which is cool.
That one. That's my favorite.
Yeah, because anyway, that's the only one I know of.
It's Caitlyn,
Echo probably
Ezreal,
has one.
Caitlyn, Ezreal, Katarina, Leona, Lux, Poppy.
Well, that's a lot. Wait, those are some weird ones. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, Battle Academia Poppy.
The Lux one's pretty good. I'm a big fan of the Leona one, actually.
That one sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me see that real
I want
quick.
to see the Caitlyn one.
Oh, the Katarina one.
Sounds like
Katarina's always a banger, but
yeah.
Caitlyn as annoyingly uptight RA instead of cop is definitely an upgrade.
All right. So my least favorite is Ezreal, I think.
Yeah. Reasonable.
God. Which of these? It's probably Katarina.
Yeah, Katarina.
Which is a shame because it's Katarina.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
our
well.
next question comes from Leovold. He asks, be honest, are you actually ready for seasonals this time? And what are you all bringing as of right now? Well, I talked about my seasonal run a little bit already. Was I actually ready for it? So yeah, unfortunately, this is after the seasonal. So I could talk a little bit about how I was doing the day of the event. I actually felt pretty confident going into it. I felt like I hadn't played maybe as much. I didn't get as many scrims in or like as much practice, like actual tournament prep, as I would have liked to have, because basically I was just busy with grad school, so I didn't really have that much time. So I didn't get to play as much as I wanted. But that being said, I was really confident in my lineup, and I had played a lot of games in the past on all of my decks. So I felt well prepared, and like I knew what was going on and like what my plans were and all of that, despite having not played as much as I'd like to, necessarily in the like week or two leading up to the event. So I was relying a little bit on my past experiences, but I still felt pretty confident with just that. So not quite as prepared as I could have been or like would have liked to have been in a perfect world, but I felt confident. So
Yeah, and then Noble and I didn't play in the seasonal.
Yeah, and that's kind of I'm still hanging out in platinum after having to grind up from like bronze, and like, yeah, I
Just getting
getting out of the rhythm of getting from plat to masters every season is brutal because I didn't get farther than plat in the one after Azirelia when I was very busy, and then just you fall so far then to have to get through 4 levels to get to masters again that it's like you have to put in an amount of time that I just did not.
Yeah, and regardless of what your win rate is, getting through silver is a slog no matter what, even if your win rate's 100%. Like it just takes time. So that's never fun.
our next question comes from Colors. They ask, Minimorph? Thoughts?
Aha, here it is.
I'll start on this one real quick. Thoughts are, I lose to it a lot, and that makes me grumpy. 2, I really hope they don't touch this card, actually. That it is one of, basically, a required answer to the format. Scion is so good, that thing needs to be a mini-Minity. Nami is way too good, that card needs to be a mini-Minity. If those 2 cards have some of their power taken away, or the decks aren't quite as good for whatever reason, then I'd be happy to take a little look at Minimorph. But personally, I think Minimorph is an excellent police card on the format, and not really broken, and it just sucks when your cards get Minimorphed, but I think it's okay, and the format needs that.
Yeah, I feel the same basically.
I feel slightly differently. I do think that while I don't think that they probably shouldn't touch Minimorph is where I'm at. However, it does really suck that because of that card's existence, I can't really ever play with Fiora again.
Yeah.
There are just certain things that become like almost completely non-viable because it's the only card in the game that just fully eradicates a champion with no way to interact with it on the stack. And I see a lot of people complain about how like burst speed is like you can't do anything about it, which a large part of that is true because because it doesn't use the stack, you can't respond to it. So if you just do a thing and then their next move is mini morph, then yeah, there's nothing you could have done about that. However, that doesn't mean there's not play around it. Like I really don't like this idea that like you can't play around mini morph. Like you absolutely can. The spell still costs 6 mana, and there are limitations to burst spells that is actually makes downside for it being a burst spell. Like you can't. Something that always came up when I used to play Tom Raka is I'd have a spell shield on my Tom Kench, and then they'd queue up like Vile Feast Vengeance or something, and I'd look down at my hand of Bastion, and be like, aha, I sure wish this worked, but it doesn't because they're burst. There's no way to queue up a Bastion, let one of the spells resolve, replenish your spell shield before the next spell comes through. The only way to deal with that situation is with a counterspell like Rite of Negation or Deny.
Yeah,
and
it. Sorry, finish real quick.
Yeah, there's just there's some very interesting complexities to burst as a spell speed, and yes, it feels bad frequently, but there's more play than people give it credit for, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and like
basically, really quick, I wanted to say a lot of like when I was playing games for the seasonal leading up to the seasonal, one of the things I tried to think a lot while I was playing my games, because I played against a lot of mini morph, because there is a lot of mini morph, and I expected to see a lot of mini morph in the tournament. I was really trying to focus on how you play around mini morph, especially with like Nami and Scion, the cards that are there trying to be mini morphed, right? Like, how do you make those interactions profitable? And I found the biggest key to playing around mini morph was that it's 6 mana. Like, if your opponent is wasting 3 mana every turn, right? Because they have to have their 3 spell mana and they have to have 3 mana banked. So they're wasting at least 3 mana every turn, right? You can just win the game where you never play your Scion, they never play their mini morph, or you never play your Nami, they never play their mini morph, by just playing the like mana trade game basically and forcing them into a position where they then have to react to the things you're doing because your deck is really good, and then they have to take themselves out of mini morph range, or sometimes you just have 2 Namis and then you just get them, that type of thing.
Yeah, the card is play aroundable. I think that some of the least fun games of Legends of Runeterra I've ever played have involved things like the card Fiora or like massive spell shielded Lee Sins. So the ability to just be like, actually have an answer that's just like, no, is very nice. The fact that it's in the region that is supposed to not really be able to deal with cards like that is a little suspect. And I don't know if I like how good of an answer it is. But on the other hand, like, I can envision playing a Fiora deck and winning a game with Screeching Dragon because my 3/2 challenger got turned into a 3/3 after I cast a buff spell on it. Like, that game is still winnable. You just have to play differently.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. You really do have to play differently.
And if, I wouldn't bemoan the death of Mono Fiora. You know what I'm saying? Like, that I would.
Yeah, it's not a super healthy deck.
Well, Mono Fiora was never alive to begin with, so
I think there was a season where it was decent.
I think it was decent because people didn't know how to play against it, but anyway.
Well, all right. Our next question comes from Dragon. They ask, what are your thoughts about the possibility of a revert to Unyielding Spirit? Let it out, man. I'm down. I'm down with to bring the power level up. I always like reverts, to be honest.
Same, but honestly, that would probably be fine. It's yet another thing that would die to Minimorph. So like, it's probably okay. And like, what are we Yeah, Minimorph exists now, so there's yet another answer in the most popular region.
Yeah.
It's also, what are we putting this on that exists in the game currently that's like not already gonna win by spending 8 mana on anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. This could totally be a revert. We can make and for anyone who doesn't instantly know what Unyielding Spirit does off the top of their head, it's the 8 mana Demacia spell that used to be burst and is now fast that says target unit cannot take damage or die.
Do you know if is this question being asked because it was brought up or just because like theoretically?
I don't actually know.
I have not heard any.
It sounds like
any
they
of
heard something about a revert happening, maybe, but I don't actually know whether or not we've heard something about it. There have been whispers of that particular card getting rebuffed again, but that's my general thoughts on whether it should or shouldn't be. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's I don't. My answer to this question is that when I've had this card played against me, it felt kind of unbeatable. But like I didn't play against it much when the burst thing was around. Like I think it would probably be fine. The fact that Minimorph and Touch are like the only two answers is kind of unfortunate.
Will of Ionia.
Oh yeah, okay.
There are more answers than people think there are. It's just
There's enough.
there's enough.
Okay.
You can also
yeah,
just
that's
go wide. Like,
elusives too. Like
yeah,
Yep.
you can go around it. Like, you can just
Scion can just go over
You can like play Reliant Soul.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that card's problematic.
Oh, and you can
Oh,
still
all right.
obliterate it, right? So Targon can still deal with it.
Yep.
Yeah. Like most regions have an answer, or at least can assemble a game plan that can beat it.
Shadow Isles can possession it and then sacrifice it.
Ooh, okay.
Wow.
now we're going too far.
No,
Shadow
it
Isles
can't.
Can go
It
around
can't die. Can you sacrifice it? Does that count as dying?
I'm not sure.
I'm
Shadow Isles
almost
can
certain
play
that if you play a
Commander
Spirit Leech, you
Ledgers
can kill
and
your unyielded
kill
Spirit
your
card.
Nexus.
I could build a deck real quick and run it out, see what happens. But
Test it out. Yeah. All right. Our last question here comes from Stein Fobla. In a very similar question to what we had earlier, what balance changes are you expecting? Will there be any? What are you hoping for? So we talked about this a little bit. I guess I'll just round out the total balance changes I'm expecting are I expect to change to Nami. I expect to change to something in Scion Draven, whether that be Scion, Draven, or Lost Soul. Those are like the three cards that come to my mind. I hope it's not Draven.
me too.
I think if Draven sees a nerf, I wouldn't say it was unwarranted. He has a nerf-worthy resume in my eyes. I just like the card enough that I hope they change other things. Those, and then I expect to see a couple Bandle City nerfs. Mostly, I want to see a Mare nerf, and I would like to see a Bandle's tree touched in some way.
Wait,
or
the
another.
card
Whether
Bandle
that
tree?
be touching some of the other cards,
Okay.
like maybe Loping Telescope. No, not the actual card Bandle tree, but like the Bandle tree archetype, basically. Yeah. So, like, I want him to touch me Telescope, that type of thing.
And you don't think Mare is big enough of a touch?
I mean, I think that it could be, but I don't. I'm not quite on the same trajectory as Hugh. I don't want to nuke him from orbit. I just want to make him like a little bit worse. Maybe like a 2-1 or something like that. Maybe get rid of the. Maybe make it so only followers get cheaper.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I don't necessarily think that this card, the Mayor, should be nuked from orbit. It's just
Drop
personal.
a bomb on those damn Yordles.
Yeah, I just
That's
want him
monster.
gone. It's just very personal at this point. I want
Call Ziggs.
I want to use him as a kickball. Like let's just end it. Anyway, I
Do you guys
hate
have
the Mayor.
anything else you want to add on to your patch list hopes?
That was pretty close for me. I would love to see some things adjusted up. Targon and Freljord are pretty cleanly the worst regions right now. And it's pretty clear that a large part is that those regions want to go late, and that Bandle City does that. Goes over the top of that in the mid game, or Bandle Tree does that over the top in the late game, and they just don't pair well with other stuff like I mean, Targon be existing in Nami Zoe makes it better than Freljord right now, because Freljord basically doesn't exist. And once again, from the Ruben Zoo thing, Freljord being the region whose identity is that it's going to outlast you, like Frostbite being a temporary solution, and Ramp and big stuff, just not really fitting into that place in the game right now. I would love to see some Freljord buffs.
I want to see some SI buffs in that same vein.
Oh, too, yeah.
Because
definitely.
I love control, and it's been pretty weak for a while, it feels like.
Absolutely.
Senna Vygar exists, but I really like any deck that is controlled to not have to have Senna and Vygar be the thing they're doing.
Yeah.
I would love to see some Senna Vygar buffs, to be honest. The deck's already pretty good, but either some nerfs down to the other things to make it a little better. But honestly, I think that deck is really good, largely in part because it's good against the things that are busted. So I kind of worry for that deck if the things that are busted get nerfed and some other things end up being better, because I think its place in the meta will get worse.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
And also, Demacia outside of Poppy is not really existent right now, which would be kind of nice, but I don't know how much there is to do. Like, I think that's a nerf down.
Saw some Scion Demacia piles.
Yeah. And another thing, Scion is really powerful. Maybe he'll hit a nerf. I'm not sure.
Yeah, all right. I think that pretty much sums up everything I have to discuss today. Do you guys want to add anything before we round it out here for today?
I got nothing.
Nope. Stay tuned for that question episode and future content in whatever form it will end up being.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of Champ Select. If you aren't a member of our Discord, you should absolutely be a member of the Discord. There will be a link for that in the description below, as well as a link to all of our other social medias, platforms, in whatever platform you're listening to on the next episode of Champ Select. Bye-bye.